Welcome to the deep dive. We're tackling a text today that's, well, it's over 2,000 years old, synonymous with military strategy. And yet, as we're going to explore, it's surprisingly packed with insights for modern life. We're diving into Sun Tzu's The Art of War, and we're using the classic Lionel Giles translation as our guide here.
Absolutely. And, when you hear the art of war, you probably picture ancient battlefields, maybe chariots, fortifications.
Right.
But our mission today, really, in this deep dive, is to sort of strip away that historical context, the military jargon, and just reveal the enduring wisdom inside. These principles of strategy, human nature, conflict, they're remarkably applicable to your world today.
Yeah, that's the big question, isn't it? How can a book about ancient warfare possibly help you navigate, say, your career or build better relationships or maybe just handle a tricky situation at work?
Well, we think it offers a really powerful lens.
And we're going to try and show you how. It's about getting to the heart of strategic thinking without, getting totally bogged down in dense history lessons.
And hopefully shift your perspective a bit. We'll look at why sometimes avoiding a fight is actually the most strategic move.
Ah, okay.
And why understanding the person you're dealing with could be a competitor, a colleague, even a partner is just as vital as knowing yourself. And how victory, well, it often comes not from sheer force, but from really clever positioning.
Okay, let's start where Sun Tzu does then, with his fundamental idea that strategy isn't just, useful, it's of vital importance. He actually calls it a matter of life and death, a road either to safety or to ruin. Pretty heavy stuff.
It is. And he lays out this framework, these 5 constant factors that he says govern all strategy.
Okay.
Yeah, think of them as maybe pillars, things you need to assess in any situation. First up, there's the moral law.
The moral law. Okay, what does that mean exactly?
Sun Tzu talks about it as what causes people to be in complete accord with their leader, to follow them regardless of danger.
So it's not just blind obedience, it's more like genuine alignment, buy-in.
Precisely. Yeah, buy-in is a great way to put it. In modern terms, it's that critical thing, team morale or company culture, that collective agreement with the leader's vision or the project's goal. Without that basic accord, really, any strategy is fighting uphill.
Got it. Okay. Factor number 2, heaven. He describes it as times and seasons, cold and heat. Sounds like external factors, the environment.
Exactly that. It's recognizing the climate you're operating in. Economic cycles, market trends, big technological shifts, even just timing things right. You absolutely have to understand and adapt to the environment. You can't ignore it.
Makes sense. And then there's earth distances, danger, security, the type of ground. So the literal landscape in ancient war.
Right, which translates today into the terrain of your modern challenge. So the competitive landscape, maybe the market geography, if that applies, the specific hurdles or opportunities baked into your industry or situation. It's about really understanding the playing field.
Then the 4th factor is the commander. And Sun Tzu lists virtues like wisdom, sincerity, benevolence, courage, and strictness.
Yeah, he lays out what he sees as the essential qualities for effective leadership. And these aren't just, nice to haves. He sees them as absolutely critical components for strategic success. Doesn't matter what the field is.
And the last one, number 5, method and discipline. Organization, ranks, logistics. The nuts and bolts.
Basically, yeah. It's about the internal machinery. How well organized are you? Are roles clear? Is there accountability? That operational efficiency, it's a strategic factor all by itself.
So Sun Tzu says knowing these 5 helps you forecast success. And he even outlines, I think, 7 considerations to compare opponents based on them. It's almost like a strategic checklist.
It really is. It's a framework. You can apply that same kind of rigor to, say, evaluating a potential business deal or assessing a competitor or even just understanding the dynamics inside your own team.
Like asking who has this stronger moral law, better team spirit.
Exactly. Or who's more tuned into heaven, the market timing, who understands the earth, the landscape better. It gives you a way to measure things.
Okay, now here's where chapter 1 gets, I think, really fascinating. Sun Tzu just states it flat out. All warfare is based on deception.
That's a big one.
Yeah. And he gives these classic examples. Seem unable when you're actually able, seem inactive when you're moving forces, appear far when you're near, near when you're far, feign disorder, hold out baits.
Right. And this is often misunderstood, I think. It's not necessarily about, lying outright all the time.
Okay.
It's more about strategically managing perception. Controlling the information flow. Think about negotiation tactics, right?
Sure.
Or how a company positions a new product before it launches. Or even just how you manage expectations in a really complex project.
Right.
It's about controlling the narrative, keeping your opponent, whether that's a competitor or just a tricky situation, keeping them off balance by not showing your entire hand right away.
Strategic misdirection.
Hmm.
That makes sense. And it really highlights the importance of calculation he stresses later on. The general who wins a battle makes many calculations. The general who loses makes but few.
Yes. Planning, thorough analysis.
Mhm.
These are absolutely paramount. Success so often comes from that careful, calculated preparation before you act, not just, reacting on impulse. It's resisting that temptation to just rush in without thinking through all the potential outcomes.
Which actually leads us really nicely into well, the stark realities of Chapter 2, Waging War.
Mhm.
Sun Tzu doesn't exactly glorify conflict, does he? He highlights its immense cost.
Not at all. He's very clear about the downsides, the expenditure, the exhaustion of resources, how it dampens everyone's spirit, drains the state.
So what's the takeaway then?
His key takeaway is incredibly pragmatic. Victory, not lengthy campaigns, is the great object. And he adds, cleverness has never been seen associated with long delays.
Wow, that feels profoundly relevant today.
Doesn't it? Think about protracted conflicts in modern life, stalled projects at work, endless internal debates that go nowhere.
Long-running legal battle.
Exactly. Or even just those persistent, unresolved arguments in personal relationships. They don't just cost money, they exhaust time, energy, morale for everyone involved. Yeah.
Sun Tzu's arguing for efficiency. Achieve your objective. Don't just get stuck in an endless, draining struggle. Get it done.
He even offers a kind of nuanced view within conflict, talking about using the conquered foe to augment one's own strength and treating captured soldiers, as he puts it, kindly and kept.
Yes, that's a really powerful idea, especially for modern competition. It's not always just about totally crushing a competitor.
Right.
It could be about learning from them, maybe integrating their strengths after a merger, or even acquiring talent. It's about finding ways to bring in different perspectives or resources after a challenge is met, rather than aiming for, total destruction.
Which feels like the perfect bridge to Chapter 3, Attack by Stratagem. This is where he introduces his concept of supreme excellence.
Yes.
And that supreme excellence is, get this, breaking the enemy's resistance without fighting. That feels so counterintuitive for a book called The Art of War.
It does. And that's one of the core insights, I think. He actually lays out a hierarchy of strategy.
The highest form, the best, is to balk the enemy's plans entirely, prevent them before they even start.
Wow, okay.
Next best is preventing their forces from joining up, then attacking their army in the field. And the absolute worst strategy, besieging walled cities.
Besieging walled cities.
That makes me think of those hopeless, resource-draining situations, like when you're trying to force a solution that just isn't working, just hammering away at some impenetrable defense.
Exactly that. Sun Tzu is pushing hard for preventative measures, for strategic solutions that bypass that direct, costly, destructive confrontation whenever possible.
So maybe like resolving a dispute through mediation instead of a lawsuit.
Precisely. Or finding a creative partnership instead of a hostile takeover. It's about achieving your goal, but elegantly and efficiently. Avoiding those costly battles if you can.
He lists 5 essentials for victory in this chapter too, and they feel like just universal principles for leading anything, really.
They really do. Knowing when to fight and when not to. Knowing how to handle different size forces. Having your army or team animated by the same spirit. Yeah. Being prepared while the enemy isn't. And having competent leadership that's free from outside interference.
Yeah, those are fundamental checks for any project, any team, right? Do you understand the situation well enough to know if action is even appropriate? Can you manage your resources effectively? Is everyone pulling in the same direction? Are you being proactive or just reactive? And is the leadership actually capable and empowered to lead?
And then, of course, there's maybe the most famous line, the one everyone knows or quotes. If you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. If you know yourself but not the enemy, for every victory gained, you will also suffer a defeat. If you know neither the enemy nor yourself, you will succumb in every battle.
It's not just a military saying, is it? It's such a profound principle for navigating almost any interaction, any competitive scenario.
Definitely. In business, it's that competitive intelligence combined with a really honest look at your own strengths and weaknesses.
Right. And for your career, it's researching that potential employer and knowing your own skills and what you actually want.
Navigating office politics means understanding the motivations swirling around you and being aware of your own communication style, your own goals.
Even in personal relationships, understanding the other person's perspective, their needs, and having clarity on your own boundaries, your own desires.
Success really hinges on that dual awareness, doesn't it?
Mm.
If you lack either self-knowledge or that external awareness, you're just vulnerable.
And having neither, well, Sun Tzu says that's guaranteed failure.
Okay, moving to chapter 4, tactical dispositions. This introduces another really critical idea. The concept of first making yourself invincible, like putting yourself beyond the possibility of defeat and then waiting for an opportunity to defeat the enemy.
Yeah, this totally shifts the focus, doesn't it? Security isn't something you just hope the enemy gives you.
Right.
It's something you build for yourself. Defeating the enemy, according to Sun Tzu, happens when they present the opportunity. It's not just because you decided to attack.
So it's more about building an inherently strong position first, like maybe shoring up your finances or developing a really valuable skill set or creating a resilient system.
Exactly. And having the patience to wait for the right moment, not just impulsively attacking and hoping it works out. You solidify your own position before you worry about theirs.
And this connects to his idea that the clever fighter wins with ease, making no mistakes, essentially conquering an enemy who is, quote, already defeated by their own errors or bad positioning.
Right. It makes the victory look almost effortless from the outside, but it's actually the result of meticulous preparation, careful positioning, capitalizing on weaknesses the opponent created themselves. The real strategic thinking happened before the fight even began.
Exactly. The outcome is so often determined by that planning and positioning done beforehand, not just how hard you fight in the moment.
Couldn't agree more.
Okay, let's maybe weave together some ideas now around adaptability and gathering information. Drawing from a few later chapters, Sun Tzu talks about weak points and strong in chapter 6, basically. Avoid what's strong, strike at what's weak.
Mm-hmm.
And he uses that beautiful analogy of water, how it shapes its course by avoiding high places and flowing downwards, and it retains no constant shape.
That's his call for supreme flexibility, isn't it? Don't be rigid. Don't have just one approach. Identify vulnerabilities could be market gaps, competitor blind spots, maybe even someone's specific triggers in a negotiation.
And leverage them.
And leverage them, yeah. Like water, adapt your form, adapt your approach based on the specific terrain, the specific adversary you're facing.
And building on that adaptability idea, in chapter 8, variation in tactics, he even includes the really striking notion that sometimes commands must not be obeyed if following them would lead to defeat.
Yeah, that's pretty radical.
It is. And he says a wise leader needs to blend advantage and disadvantage in their plans.
It really speaks to the need for situational awareness, that has to override just rigidly following orders. It's about risk assessment, having backup plans, contingency plans, and relying on your own readiness, not just hoping the competition doesn't make a move.
Right, being proactive.
Exactly. And he also lists those 5 dangerous faults of a general in that chapter, things like recklessness, cowardice, having a hasty temper, being overly sensitive about honor, too much solicitude.
Those sound like classic leadership pitfalls.
They absolutely are. Things driven by emotion or ego that just wreck good strategy.
They really highlight that need for emotional control, don't they?
Yeah.
Strategic thinking over just impulsive reactions or like misplaced pride, knowing when you actually need to deviate from the original plan because reality has changed.
And underpinning all of this strategy, all this adaptability, is information. Chapter 13 on the use of spies is incredibly direct about this.
Yeah, he doesn't mince words.
No. He argues that staying ignorant of the enemy is basically inhumane because conflict is so costly. Foreknowledge, he says, is key. And he states it bluntly that knowledge can only be obtained from other men.
He even outlines different types of spies: local, inward, converted, doomed, surviving.
Yeah.
Different ways to gather intelligence.
Right. And he stresses that managing this requires things like intuition, benevolence, sincerity, subtle ingenuity. It's not just about collecting data.
And he highlights the converted spy. Getting info from the enemy's own sources is the most important.
Okay, now translate this to today. What do you see?
You see the critical role of market research, competitive intelligence, building strong networks.
Absolutely. Getting information from all sorts of sources, talking to customers, your own employees, former employees, industry contacts, analyzing public data, it's all vital.
So valuing that intelligence gathering and developing the skills, analytical, interpersonal, to do it well and ethically, that's just non-negotiable today in any complex field.
Information isn't just power, it's foundational. You can't have sound strategy without it.
And throughout the book, Sun Tzu constantly brings the focus back to leadership and, well, human nature. We touched on the commander's virtues earlier. In Chapter X, Terrain, He notes that treating soldiers with humanity but keeping them under control with strict discipline. That's the certain road to victory.
Ah, yes, the timeless leadership tightrope walk, right. Balancing that care and empathy with clear expectations and real accountability.
Yeah.
He warns that being too indulgent without enforcing standards just leads to chaos. But confidence in your team, combined with insisting on executing well, that's where you find mutual success.
In Chapter 11, The Nine Situations, he advises the general to be quiet, for secrecy, and upright and just for order. He talks about leading men like a shepherd.
Giving clear direction, even if the sheep don't fully grasp the grand strategy.
Right. And he explicitly talks about needing to understand the fundamental laws of human nature.
That's such a core theme. Strategy isn't abstract, it's applied to people. Leading requires a certain mystique, maybe, and decisiveness, but also that deep understanding of what motivates people.
Like how people fight hardest when they feel cornered.
Exactly. Understanding those dynamics is crucial if you want to inspire action and keep everyone together.
And one final point on human nature and leadership. From Chapter 12, Attack by Fire. Sun Tzu warns very explicitly, do not act merely out of spleen or pique, out of anger or annoyance. He cautions that emotions, they're temporary. But the consequences, like a destroyed state or maybe a ruined project or relationship, they can be permanent.
That is such a vital lesson in emotional intelligence for any leader, really for anyone making important decisions under pressure. Strategic action has to be guided by rational assessment, not just impulsive reactions driven by anger or frustration. Be deliberate, be cautious.
So when you bring it all together like this, it's just striking how these ancient principles of conflict, competition, they truly do transcend the battlefield.
They absolutely do. That framework for assessment, the emphasis on calculation, understanding the costs, the pursuit of winning without fighting if possible.
The importance of positioning, the need for adaptability, and good intelligence.
And those deep insights into leadership and just basic human nature, these are universal skills. They apply everywhere.
Think about how directly this applies to your world, right?
Yeah.
In business. It's strategic planning, responding to competitors, mastering negotiation, building cohesive teams, rigorous market analysis, navigating challenges with foresight instead of just reacting.
For your career, it's plotting your path strategically, understanding the dynamics of your workplace, the politics, preparing thoroughly for interviews or promotions, understanding the industry landscape, constantly adapting your skills.
And even in relationships. It's about understanding different personalities, different motivations, choosing the right time and the right way to address conflict, setting boundaries effectively, adapting how you communicate, finding those win-win solutions instead of just getting stuck in a fight.
At its core, really, Sun Tzu's The Art of War isn't just a military manual. It's a profound exploration of strategy, human nature, and the dynamics of competition and cooperation that are just constant across human experience.
Yeah. Its enduring relevance, it seems, comes from this timeless understanding of how to navigate complex situations, how to achieve goals efficiently, effectively, often by looking for that path of least resistance or seizing the opportunity that your own preparation created.
Well said.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, here's maybe a final thought to carry with you, something Sun Tzu himself said. Success in warfare is gained by carefully accommodating ourselves to the enemy's purpose.
Accommodating the enemy's purpose. That's interesting phrasing.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah.
So consider that idea. How might understanding, and in a strategic sense, accommodating the underlying purpose, the goals, the needs, the motivations of someone you're interacting with?
Whether it's a colleague, a competitor, even a loved one.
Right. How might understanding their purpose fundamentally change how you approach that interaction?
What if success comes less from just overpowering their position?
And more from intelligently understanding and responding to what's actually driving them, their underlying purpose.
That's a different kind of victory, isn't it?
That's the end of this deep